Hey, Fannin, good morning. This is your devotional for Tuesday, May 5th. I want to get right into it. So, as we're coming out of this COVID situation, we've been thinking about things. We're going to kind of aim our devotionals and our Wednesday night lessons and try to, remind you to, do some thinking about what's happened during this. What are some habits that maybe you built that you want to keep? What are some things that you were maybe forced to quit doing that you would like to not start up again? Just to use this for a reflective period as we come out of this time before things get crazy again or crazier. So today I want to talk about this idea. I've been getting sermon clips from YouTube and different people sending me this stuff. And of course, there's a lot of talk out there about this being kind of a move towards a one world order and the book of Revelation and are we in the end times and all that. And I'll say right now, I don't know. No one knows. You can make some guesses, you can look at things, but even Jesus in the Bible said even he didn't know. Only the Father knows. So we always have to keep that in mind. But that in mind, I want to say something about kind of this thinking that's out there about the government and about things that have been done to the country. And I'll say this first. I agree there have been steps that the government, state and federal, have taken that I don't necessarily agree with as an American. I believe we've taken some steps in certain directions that are moving us further down the road than we want to go. That in mind, as a Christian, I have to look at some things differently. So I want to read you something. So Jesus, when he's coming, he's on the Easter lesson. I talked about this, but when Jesus came in, and then on Palm Sunday, and everybody laid the palms down and welcomed him as a king and all that. During that week before leading up to the crucifixion. Jesus is approached by a number of religious authorities and they ask him different questions. They're testing him, to see if he's worthy. One of these questions that he's asked, I want to talk about real quickly today because I think it applies to this time. And so it's in Matthew 22. He's asked by the Pharisees. It's a wisdom question is what it would be. In other words, Jesus, we know you know the law. We know you're very smart, but how would you apply that law to a real world situation? So they come to him and they say, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. So they gave him a denarius, and he said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? And of course they say, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So you look at this, and a lot of times we just simply think it's about paying taxes. And it is. But it's just like anything Jesus said. It's simple on one level, but it goes very deep. And in reality, for our situation, what he is saying is that we are to obey Caesar, whoever that is, president, state, whatever, as long as Caesar stays in his or her lane. God has put them in authority. God has given them the authority. But when they veer out of that, that's when we are to question whether we are to obey. So the early Christians would run into this not many years in the future after this happens. That the Caesar then would say, okay, you need to pay your tax, but also you need to light, a candle. And you need to say that Caesar is Lord. So Christians at that time realized, hey, you know what? Caesar's getting out of his lane. Because he's saying he's Lord. There's only one Lord. That's God. And so they said, we're not going to do that. So you see the line there? Caesar moved over into God's territory. He said, you need to proclaim me Lord. It wasn't just enough to be Caesar anymore. So this is always that line. So we've always got to say, okay, the government's asking me to do this, still in their lane. Maybe I don't agree with it, but they haven't moved into God's line. And I would say through this situation, haven't agreed with a lot of things the government's asked us to do, but they have not, at this point, moved into, that other lane. Are things being set up for down the road where it may happen? I don't know. Possibly. That one world thing that's always out there. And you really have to think about it. So, take another step back. You think, as a Christian, the very nature of Christianity, if you are a true follower of Christ, is unpatriotic to any place you live and government. You may be in obedience, but your loyalties lie with God. Think about the Lord's Prayer. One of the things you pray is to God, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So, You're basically saying, God, will you come here and make your kingdom here? And, America's great, but in reality, at the end of the day, when you read the book of Revelation, there's a part of me that hope America's gone. Because the book of Revelation, I don't understand exactly how it's going to work out. But when I see the final battle, it's all the forces of mankind, all the nations on the earth against God. And I don't really want to see America in that. So there is a nature to Christianity that is very subversive. We are attempting to overthrow this world because that's what we want, right? We don't want to go back to the good old days of the 1940s or the 20s or the 1870s or whenever people think the good old days were. We want to go back to the good old days, back before Adam and Eve took that apple and bit it. So, think about these things, when you think about, these sermons and these things, maybe talking about end times. Yeah, eventually we're going to get to that point. Is this time that point? I don't know. So, remember this. Think about it. Is the government asking me to do something I don't agree with? Maybe. Is the government asking me to do something that moves, my obedience from God to them? That's the bigger question. So just something to think about today. If you have any more questions, feel free to, text me or email me. So anyhow, you have a good day. Thanks. Bye.